Hi, our guest today is Harold Rhodes of Milford, and Harold's going to talk about a book he wrote called The Blameless Victim, which is about actually a tragedy in your own family, Harold. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, yes, it is, Kevin, and first of all, thank you very much for having
Our pleasure.
having me this opportunity. It is a very sad story. It goes back to January 9th, 2002, when my wife's car was stopped for some road work on Route 109 close to Trotter Drive. And she was just stopped waiting for the policeman to let her pass. And unbeknownst to her, a tractor trailer carrying 40 tons of liquid asphalt had come up from Edison, New Jersey, and it was on his way to the asphalt processing plant in Millis, and got to Route 109 where my wife was stopped and failed to stop. And my wife had a choice of going to the left, coming into the oncoming cars, go straight, right directly into the policeman, and drove off to the right and down the embankment. And because of that, she was left paraplegic. We were glad that it wasn't brain damage. We were glad that it wasn't quadriplegia, but it was paraplegia. And on January 9th, 2002, our lives changed.
And in the first half of your book, The Blameless Victim, is really based on diaries you kept detailing what was going on in your life during those early years of caring for her.
And again, beginning on that day, I started just to keep notebooks of all the things that I needed to remember to do. So each day I would just write down, just as I would be going through going through all the activities of talking to doctors and healthcare providers and family members and everybody, and I just started filling up these notebooks of all these things to do, and it became a diary. So I started to include, my own thoughts about how things were going.
And it's fairly candid.
And
I've used the word brutal in describing it.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's raw. I did not hold back anything throughout the whole book, and also, when my wife Marcia read the book with me, agreed to allow to have it be so brutal, to be so raw, because it opens Marcia up to the most personal, most deeply sensitive topics. And also went on to our daughter, Rebecca, who was just 14 at the time, who also allowed me to go and share her most personal and deeply sensitive topics.
And the book is also about the effect of the fact that Rebecca's mom was critically injured. You became her full-time caregiver, and Rebecca at times, I don't want to use the word ignored, but Rebecca was the third wheel, and you just trying to keep your wife going and keep yourself going.
Well, to be sure, it was a very, very difficult time. Rebecca was just turned 14 years old, and with any 14-year-old...
That's a tough time.
But you've told me the teachers in the middle school and later the high school and your friends in town really stepped in and helped out with her.
And that was the very good news. I have to say that everyone in the town of Milford was just so overwhelmingly helpful and caring about making sure that Becca did okay.
And she is a well-adjusted young lady today.
She is a fine young lady just graduating with her master's from Columbia University.
All right.
That's fantastic.
But let me just share a little bit more about the folks that helped. Nancy Angelini, who was the housemaster at the high school, just looked after Marcia, or looked after Rebecca. In a lot of cases, when a child is having difficulties and is acting out, they'll just send the child home. But here in Milford, they just let Becca sit down, be quiet, and when she felt like it, she just went back to class. that way she didn't lose any time while in school and just kept going and knew that there were adults that cared about her that didn't want to just push her off. But at the same time, I'm attending to Marcia, and
you're getting deeper and deeper in debt, according to your book, because nobody's forthcoming with anything, the lovely insurance companies, which are the second half of the book, your court fights with them. But you chronicled how you're getting deeper and deeper into debt. You're so tired, you're making what you call the colossal mistakes, and you number them. And I think you're being too hard on yourself, but you said you told me in personal conversations you're there for pointers to other people, and I agree. But I think they're things you just learned through the process.
and that's
And
so,
I don't know, first of all, I don't know how anybody would hold up in those circumstances with the growing debt. I think you borrowed off your house. You're retrofitting your house. You're spending hundreds of thousands on medical bills. You're trying to get her as well as you can. And you're trying to raise a daughter, and you're trying to deal with you, Harold Rhodes. I don't know how anybody wouldn't have a nervous breakdown doing that.
well, when people read the book, they're going to understand that there were some days and some weeks that life was very difficult for me, but it is difficult for Marcia and for Rebecca. And you correctly said that as I'm going through the process of, on the first half of the book on the medical side, I made a number of very large, what I call colossal mistakes. And when I was writing the book, I wrote them for the specific reason that hopefully the next person that is seriously injured reads this book, you know, as they're going through the process. First, to know that others go through this and they come out the other end okay. But second, to not make the same mistakes that we made. I mean,
All caregivers make them. I mean, you and I have had conversations. I took care of both my parents, and it's a learning system of when do you fight and for what and about what. And you know, my mother got shuffled to 3 different places in one day, a week before she died. I thought that was outrageous.
and these are the sorts of things that I write out for, you know, families,
Right.
loved ones, to recognize that this might happen and to know how to deal with it before it becomes a problem for them. But as you said, we're going through this process and we haven't heard from the tractor trailer drivers insurance company. I mean, a year goes by, a year and a half goes by, and we haven't heard anything. And we're spending a lot of money, and all of it's coming out of our own bank accounts. It was just fortunate that we had money in the bank.
You had a successful career in high tech.
And if I don't know what another family who didn't have money in the bank would do. I'm beyond myself trying to understand how they would pay for all of these extraordinary expenses to continue their lives while not having this money.
This was not a broken leg, folks. This was catastrophic. Her spinal cord was severed. 24-hour care.
Yes. Everything you can possibly imagine. As you said, the house had to be renovated for wheelchair accessibility. Extensive medical equipment needed to be purchased to make her comfortable.
Yeah.
The hospital and doctor's visits were enormous.
And everyone I've talked to who's read this book said they could not put it down. I think I was up until 2 or 3 one morning. I started in the late afternoon and just could not put it down. And not because I have a sick fascination, because I really wanted to know how you got through it and what the result was. And the end result was it took a dozen years. I can't remember how until the court cases were decided. You went all the way up to the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court.
So it did come a time that we did have to force the 2 insurance companies, Zurich American Insurance, as well as AIG, to press them to provide a settlement for the personal injury.
And then they tried to nickel and dime what your wife's care would be.
Believing that the longer they could hold us off, the more we were going to need the money, and the more likely that we would take
A settlement.
a very
lowball
lowball settlement. So we did go to trial, and that took nearly 3 years to get to trial. And even after the jury came back with a verdict in our favor, still AIG
they wouldn't pay.
wouldn't pay.
The same AIG that the
Right.
all of us bailed out later in
The
the
very same
Depression.
one. And you can't imagine how difficult that is, because you get through this incredible legal process of getting up to a trial. You go through interrogatories and depositions.
where
and
what you and your wife went through was then compounded by getting it double by lawyers asking you the most personal questions, your wife the most personal questions on the witness stand or in depositions,
as well as my daughter.
as well as your daughter.
Can you imagine a little 14-year-old girl going through depositions by very high-powered attorneys who are just hoping to trip her up?
Or you, or Marcia, to try to get you to not pay out money.
So the second part of the book goes into all of the legal issues that we faced, so as to be able to give people an understanding of the legal process here in Massachusetts. And I'll start with the end of the story, which is that the civil justice system here in Massachusetts is just unfair. It's really rigged against ordinary folks. It definitely works in the favor of large companies, large insurance companies. And there is a law in Massachusetts which says that if an insurance company acts in bad faith, they can be penalized for their bad faith. Now, up till our point, no insurance company had ever been substantially penalized for their bad faith, even though this law had been around for years and years and years.
But you went after them for that.
But we went after them.
And you won.
And well, in the first case in trial court by Judge Gantz, who is now Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice Gantz,
Right.
we lost. Well, we won a little, but for all intents and purposes, we lost. He couldn't see where AIG or Zurich acted in bad faith, even after all the things that they had done to us.
Right.
And as far as he was concerned, most generally, he felt that they did not act willfully and knowingly in bad faith. And it was difficult to understand how that could possibly be, that this is how an insurance company could act. So we did an appeal to the appeals court, and the appeals court generally ratified what the trial court had said, again, making a small moderation, but for all intents and purposes, saying, no, the insurance companies acted, not knowingly, not willfully doing this bad faith. And so they're not to be penalized for what they did. And you can't imagine how crushing this is, because we lived it. And Marcia's accident, her injuries were known within 3 months, 6 months. We knew that the driver was guilty. He received a ticket and was found guilty.
He got basically, what, a slap on the hand?
And he got basically a slap on the hand, but he was found guilty. So there wasn't any question whether
whose fault it was.
whose fault it was, or the damages. That was all laid out in thousands of pages. So there wasn't any real reason. But we lost at trial court. We lost at in the appeals court.
And you went to the state Supreme Court.
So we went to the Supreme Judicial Court and argued the case. And fortunately, we won against AIG, but we lost against Zurich. Now, it's good that we won against AIG. AIG certainly did do some heinous actions towards us, and they certainly did deserve to be substantively punished for their activities, in the hope that they won't do that to somebody else. The other piece of good news about that was this decision, Rhodes versus AIG in Zurich, cleared the path, made it much more understandable for plaintiffs' attorneys on how to file a legal complaint and win that complaint on a 93A.
I was told
insurance
it
companies.
is considered a landmark case
It
in the
is.
state.
It is a landmark decision by all accounts. The Supreme Judicial Court laid it out very clear. So now what was very unclear is now very clear, and it's been followed up now by multiple additional 93A cases, which have been won by the plaintiffs, and not surprisingly, several against AIG.
Okay.
Now, the bad news was
Yes.
we lost against Zurich. And I've often said that the activities done by Zurich were much more heinous, much more ruthless than what was done by AIG. In insurance parlance, Zurich had the responsibility to pay the first $2 million. Well, it was obvious right from the day of the accident that Marcia's expenses, her medical expenses, her
Would
pain
go
and
beyond
suffering, the losses of consortium, all of those things would quickly pass $2 million. So, you know, if it's an auto accident, they just write you a check right then, and they say, go fix it, and if there's a problem, let us know. Well, that's not how it works. You know, you would hope that Zurich would have started giving us money on day one, so as to as to minimize our
Exposures.
our exposures to make our lives easier. No, they didn't, and where they knew, and the claims notes are actually on the Blameless Victim website, and it talks that they know that it's going to be between a $5 and $10 million judgment, and they know that their verdict is going to be their policy is completely exposed. So, by all accounts of all the lawyers and the plaintiffs' bar, the activities by Zurich were much worse, much worse. So unfortunately, if a primary insurance carrier just does exactly what Zurich does, they're not going to be held responsible for any willful or knowing action.
Until somebody takes the longer path than you did. And now, the good news, if there is any good news, is, well, let's go. Your daughter seems to be well-adjusted.
Yes.
And living well.
Yes.
Marcia has some quality of life now.
Yes. You know, fortunately, and you know, I thank every day for our hospital. You know, Milford Regional Hospital has been, the doctors at Milford Regional Hospital have been so wonderful. She has been under the same care of the same doctors for the last 12 years.
Wow.
And they know her extremely well. And in the book, I talk about different doctors.
Yes, you do.
About how wonderful they've been to Marcia in dealing with some of the most difficult.
You also talk, you have, although it's a footnote, you have almost a paragraph in there about what you think of the people of Milford.
And then I generally describe how everybody in the community came forward in their own way to help us.
And then you yourself have become sort of a disability crusader, and not in a negative sense, in a very positive sense, and you're now the chairman of the Milford Commission on Disability.
So, you know, people ask me now that this has been done, and as I'm working through the book, you know, what can I do? What can Marcia and I do to give back?
And what I'd like to point out to everybody, one of the reasons you're here, and I've plugged you in a column, and we've certainly mentioned you in both papers, is you self-published the book, but every cent of profit from this book is going toward the Milford Regional Emergency Room expansion.
That's exactly right. All proceeds of this book go to the Milford Regional Hospital for their ICU ER expansion. And we're very proud, you know, very, very proud to do that, because the hospital has been, you know, well, frankly, they've saved Marcia's life on more than one occasion.
Right.
And, you know, when an organization does that, you develop such an affinity for everybody in that hospital. And, you know, if we can do this, and if we can make our donations, and if we can make our gifts to the hospital count, we want to make it a little easier for the next folks that might have this problem. And as you said, I became chairman of Milford's Commission on Disability. And with the other commission members, we advocate on behalf of persons with disabilities, whether it's low vision or low hearing or special needs or spinal cord injury.
And let's plug an article coming up at because this will air before the May 18th town meeting. You guys, well, the selectmen have it, but it's there is an article at the May 18th Milford annual town meeting that would give all the handicap parking violation fines, instead of going to the town's general fund, would go to the commission for you guys to spend on fixing problems in town.
Which is a great
And you have the support, by the way. The Finance Committee voted recently in favor of supporting that, as did the selectmen.
And
so hopefully that means the town meeting members will follow. And we're talking, just so people don't think we're talking about tens and tens of thousands. I think the average has been $8,000 to $12,000 a year over the last couple of years.
It has been very good news to the commission members and myself to know that the Board of Selectmen choose to support us
Well,
recognize.
in fact, you guys originally asked for 50%, and one of the selectmen said, let's just do the whole thing.
Yes, that would be Selectman Buckley, who
Mm-hmm.
said, you know, all the other towns do 100%. Let's do 100% for our Commission on Disability.
No debate at the Finance Committee meeting, by the way, when they discussed it. It was just, yes, let's do it.
And that's wonderful news, because we're going to use those monies to you know, improve the lives of those less fortunate, those with disabilities, to help them, you know, make Milford more accessible. And we have a, you know, a list of things we want to do, and we're going to work through it now with the funds provided by the handicap parking funds.
And I know you write lengthy memos on every project that comes before the planning board. I see them, and I think people are getting used to the level of things you want now.
Well, we, you know, as I said, one of our roles is to advocate, and we make sure that
Right.
every new facility, every new building comes together with excellence in accessibility. So we'll look over all the site plans, all the building plans, and make suggestions to the developer, builder, owner as to how to even improve their plans for accessibility. So they may be meeting very nicely ADA rules, but we might even suggest to them to do even more.
Different
and,
things, right.
And in most cases, they're very happy to even further what their plan is.
As I tell people, I don't know if the average person realizes, but when you're building a new building, what little incremental cost there is, translated over whatever financing you've done over 20 or 30 years, is so minimal, there's no reason to argue about it.
And that's exactly right. For example, the new hospital garage that's being built as part of the ICU,
Yes.
we requested that the hospital garage actually double the number of required handicap accessible parking spots. And they were very glad to do that. So the fact that they do it right from the beginning
Makes all the difference in the
makes
world.
it so
Well,
much easier for them than
Yeah.
if we came back later and said, could you do this?
Yeah, because,
Yeah,
well,
right now, I can tell you, at the current main entrance, there are 6, and they're normally filled.
that's not enough.
And and they understood that. And you know, the fact that it was brought up to them in plenty of time to do when they were doing their construction planning, we're very, very happy, you know, to say that was a good idea. Let's just do that. So we try to encourage developers to do not only what meets the regulation, but do best practices. Understand the community in which we live, the kinds of folks who are going to be visiting your building. And
And we have an aging society,
And we have
We
an
have an
aging
aging
group.
with the baby boomers going through and the next group going through. But this book, I think, is amazing because although it's a very brutal read, you come out of it with almost great joy for your family. And I don't know if people have had that given you that reaction, but you know, as I said, I did sit there, and it got to be like 2 or 3 in the morning when I was getting near the end, and we were in the legal section, so I will confess I may have flipped a few over there quickly. But I came out with almost a sense of hope that you won, and that you got somewhere, and that, even more important, you seem to be both along in your lives and have gotten over it, such as you can get over a catastrophic illness.
Well, one of the things that's really, really good is it explains to people from the beginning what to expect, because those of us who've gone through something like this, and I explained it to somebody, it's like kind of like walking into a room with 3 doors, and someone says, okay, pick a door. Well, what's behind the door? Well, don't know, but pick a door. And you go through that door, and then it's another door, 3 doors. So you never know what's on the other side of the door, but you always have to pick one to go through. So you're always trying to understand what the next step is, anticipation of that next step, and the worry and stress that goes with that anticipation. And then to fight insurance companies when, you know, usually when you go through that door, your hopes that somebody on the other side is trying to help you. In your case, the guy on the other side of the door is trying to say, "Now you can't come through this door." So, I mean, it's a double whammy.
I particularly found offensive where, you know, you had people trying to judge the amount of money your wife would need, just, I don't want to say normal life, but a comfortable life given her disabilities. And you know, they get into the dollar and cents of that. I hate that part of business.
Well, and the insurance companies anticipate that. As you say, they plan on that. If we hold off, you'll be willing to settle for less because you'll be stressed out and you'll want something.
So that's my message from the book. This,
play
what you
you-
just said, is don't give in. Don't give in to an insurance company. Find yourself the very best medical folks to help you work through all the medical issues. Give them plenty of opportunity to do all the things that they know to do. And on the insurance side, find some very good attorneys
Which you
who are-
did.
who are willing to see that this is a substantial case and that they're not going to just settle for the first low ball or second low ball offer, that they're willing to do everything. They're going to fight hard
Fight the good fight.
and be willing to go to trial if it's necessary to do that.
Okay,
And as you said, Kevin, there is hope. And somebody who reads this book, I hope understands that it is difficult for many years, but you can come out of it in a good way. And by doing that, life gets a lot better after it's all the hard work has been done.
It's a positive attitude. Life gets better.
But obviously,
That's
you're,
good.
you're still your wife's primary caregiver.
Right.
She's still wheelchair
Yeah,
bound.
she still has many what we call comorbidities,
Right.
but
Still
she's-
having medical, ongoing medical care.
but she's in a good way because all of the things that are going on with her now are known, and she's got great doctors at the hospital who are
Right.
taking care of her,
And great family and friends.
and great, wonderful friends here in Milford who her girlfriends are just wonderful. And so she has a very good support system.
That's good.
Which is the thing that makes a difference. After everything ends, who's going to be there to take care of you?
And it looked like you've turned the experience into positive, not just by writing the book, but through what you do on the Commission on Disability.
I hope so. I hope so. I'm working very hard with the other commission members to now take what we've learned and hopefully make Milford an even better community for those who have disabilities. And
But what I like about the book is I started taking care of my parents who had, nothing as catastrophic as your wife. I'm looking online, I'm looking in the Milford Town Library, I'm asking friends, what is there that tells me about caregiving or what do I need to know? And there was no one good book that tells you. The AARP actually has one about helping your aging parents with their finances so there are no surprises when they go. But really, I wound up taking a local course from Tri-Valley Associates about caregiver stress, which made it easier to talk to my two sisters about issues. But until I read this, there was nothing for anybody that I've seen, anybody with the type of injuries your family went through, that really guided them through, here's what you may expect.
The expectations.
And here are the colossal mistakes that you shouldn't make, which I still think you were hard on yourself in naming them, but I understand you want to teach other people. I just, everyone I know who's gone into the book hasn't been able to put it down. And they all agree with me in my word of choice of brutal, but it's a great book, and I thank you for writing it, and we really wish you and Marcia well going forward.
Well, thank you very much.
And how can somebody get this?
This is purchasable, can be purchased on Amazon.
Yes.
Just purchase it under the book section, and it's at just $13.
And it's by
And all the
searching for The
profits-
Blameless Victim or Harold Rhodes.
Right?
And is it at the local Barnes & Noble in Bellingham?
Not yet, but we're working to get that done. We've just now, the publishing has just now gone in for the bookstores.
Good.
Okay.